Hello and welcome to The Culture Bar, a panel discussion podcast exploring the arts and music world. In this podcast to mark National Trumpet Day, I'm joined by British trumpeter Matilda Lloyd. Matilda joined our roster at the start of 2023 and she joined me for this podcast to chat all things trumpet, ranging from what makes the instrument special, key repertoire, and where she sees the instrument going in the future, as well as hearing all about her background into becoming a professional musician. Thank you so much, Matilda, for joining us today for this podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, to celebrate National Trumpet Day, a very important day to celebrate.
Incredibly important.
So, first of all, it would be great to hear how you first became a trumpeter for people who don't know.
Yes, so I grew up in a very musical household. My mum is a piano teacher and a piano accompanist. So we had a piano at home and she started teaching me little bits of piano when I was about 4 or 5 years old, and sort of having piano lessons and things like that. And then when I was about 8 years old, the story goes that I was rummaging through all the cupboards in my parents' house trying to find a new exciting toy to play with. And I just happened to stumble across my dad's old trumpet, because he had learned the trumpet when he was in school. But he'd stopped at the age of 18 and, hadn't played since. And I came across his old trumpet and thought, wow, this looks exciting and fun and shiny and, whatever. And so they let me have a go on it and I could make a noise on the instrument. So they said, okay, well, we better get us some lessons then.
And the rest is history.
Exactly. So I it was a chance, really.
Did you find that access quite easy at school? Like, did you have lessons in school?
Yeah, I had to go to a different school to have my lessons. And then eventually, when I went to secondary school, I did have lessons in school. And then I went to Junior Guildhall and had my lessons up there. So that was really when I started to kind of take the trumpet much more seriously. And it sort of took over as being my favourite instrument. So I also played the cello.
Oh, yeah, of course. Just, one instrument is not enough.
Yeah, exactly. No, when I was 10 years old, actually my sister decided she wanted to play the cello. So we went along to one of these like instrument tryout days for her, and I was just, I just tagged along. She tried the cello and didn't like it and ended up picking the clarinet. But I was like, oh, well, I'm here, I might as well have a go. And I just really enjoyed that sort of feeling of like hugging the cello. So I learnt the cello as well.
I feel like you find that a lot with accomplished musicians, that there's never just one instrument in their story, like in their history. Like there's always another instrument that that they were fond of when they were growing up or something.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's been really helpful for me because, I understand about bowing and like string playing technique and stuff. And so much of that, like the articulation is like transferable over onto the trumpet. And the piano, I think everyone should learn the piano. It's the foundation. And I would recommend anyone to start on the piano before moving to another instrument, because it's so much easier when you can already read music and you understand rhythms, and it makes learning a single melody line instrument much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the Guildhall School of Music. Is it Guildhall School of Music?
Yeah, music.
So where did you progress after that? After you had your lessons there, what was next?
So I was there for 4 years, and then once I'd finished at Junior Guildhall, that was when I finished school. So that was kind of like the last 4 years of school through GCSEs and A-levels. And I would have a full day there every Saturday. So I would come up on the train to London. I had to get up at 5:30 in the morning every Saturday for 4 years to have 8 a.m. trumpet lessons.
Dedication.
I know. I don't know why they put me first in the day. But it was always my favourite day of the week, and it was packed full of. I had my cello lessons up there as well. So you can imagine sort of tiny little 14-year-old me with like 3-4 trumpets and a cello on the train in the tube trying to get to the Barbican. It was very, very funny. Awesome. And then we'd have like all sorts of brass ensemble things as well, wind band, orchestra, brass band. I even had jazz piano lessons up for a while, just for fun as well, to fill the day. They were always my absolute favourite days of the week, and I just had such a great time at Junior Guildhall. And then I went to Cambridge and did my undergrad degree. I decided to do an academic music degree. I had this big decision that I think lots and lots of musicians face, which is to go straight into that conservatoire music college setting, or to go down the more academic university route. So I of course applied to the college and the Guildhall and the academy and those places as well. But I decided that I think for me it would have been too soon to go and just play the trumpet. I wasn't quite ready for that at that stage, and I enjoyed school and academic work, and I really loved history. So I thought, okay, well, if I go to Cambridge and read music, I get to do a bit of the playing. I get to, learn a lot more about analysis and theory and all those kinds of things as well. But mostly I'll get to do lots of history papers and music history, which was a thing I was really interested in discovering. And I learned so many things and found so many new types of music that I loved. I found a passion for early choral music and the notation that they would write in all the old sort of 4-part chants and things like that, and I learned how to write all of them and transcribe them into modern day notation. So I found that super interesting, and learning about periods of music, I studied the history of flamenco music and lots of Shostakovich and Brahms and all these different things, which I think has really helped shape me into a much more all-rounded musician. But I was still doing a lot of playing on the side. I was playing in all the orchestras there. I was also in the European Union Youth Orchestra at that time as well. So all the 3 summers that I was there, I was on tour with them, which was really great fun. And then I was also starting to do more and more solo stuff on the side as well. So it was kind of then a natural progression to the Royal Academy of Music for my masters, because I was already having lessons with Mark David. When I was at Academy, I was kind of going up and down to London to have proper lessons with him. So it made sense to then just go on to the Academy and do my masters there.
So that's when you specified completely in just playing the trumpet after that?
Exactly,
then?
yeah.
Right. Because I think there's this assumption that if you want to be a performer, then it's just a conservatoire route, when actually degrees give you such a rounded music education, and performance is never sidelined. You can make it
exactly,
you want.
Exactly, and you can choose the modules, and you've got so much spare time. You can choose what you want to do with it. And for me, especially I think for brass players, it's not really realistic or even physically possible to be playing for hours and hours and hours and hours every day. So when I was at Cambridge, I was maybe only doing an hour and a half to 2 hours practice a day. But I wasn't ready at the age of 18, 19 to just play the trumpet all day, every day. But by the time I got to the masters, it was, I was ready for that. And I already knew at that point when I was going into my masters that I wanted to be a soloist. So I really then embraced everything that the Academy had to offer with all the master classes and the competitions and all of that. And I learned as much repertoire as I could of the solo repertoire, the pieces for trumpet and piano and trumpet and organ and the concertos. And I just really used every opportunity there to practice. I had the time then. So yeah, I'm very pleased that I decided to go to Cambridge first. But then I think doing a 2-year masters as well was great, because it just gave me the time and the safety, the academy bubble.
That bubble. It sounds like you had such a lovely, rich education, all the way from the Guildhall Junior School all the way up to masters level. And obviously you are known for being such a champion of the instrument. So, seeing as it's National Trumpet Day, let's talk about the trumpet. What do you think makes it stand out as an instrument compared to all the other instruments you can pick, all the timbres?
Yeah.
What is it about it?
I think for me, the thing that's the most exciting about the trumpet is how versatile it is, and how many different styles and genres and types of music that you can play with the trumpet. I obviously went down the kind of classical trumpet soloist path, but if you're someone that's learning the trumpet or interested in learning the trumpet, you can play in wind bands, jazz bands, big bands. You can play pop songs, you can play film music, you can play in orchestras, you can play in brass bands, you can do chamber music, you can be in a samba band or a funk band, or you can do everything. And that, to me, that's so exciting, because it just have all these different worlds and all these different styles. And I think I don't think there's another instrument that is as versatile, and you can play as many different types of music and genres of music as the trumpet. And the reason why that's possible is because it's such a varied instrument in terms of the different sounds that you can make and the different ways that you can play it. So I think that just makes it so cool and so exciting, and it's loud as well.
You can be really loud with it, as opposed to like the flute or something else, or the harp. It's quite tricky to be loud on those kind of instruments. But yeah, the trumpet definitely doesn't hide that characteristic.
You can't hide. You've got nowhere to hide. Even in an orchestra, there's nowhere to hide. It's very different to sitting in a big string section, for example. But I think that means that people that play brass instruments typically, have quite a lot of courage and confidence, and sort of people tend to be more extroverted and sort of social, and there's that sort of fun, really, really sociable side of playing a brass instrument as well, which is lovely. Every orchestra that I go to now to do a concerto with, it's always the brass players that come up and introduce themselves and say hello, and I'll learn their names, and then they'll invite me to go out for dinner with them after the concert, or they're just so warm and welcoming all over the world, and I think that's a lovely sort of characteristic and trait of people that play brass instruments, especially.
That doesn't surprise me. I don't want to think about which part of an orchestra is the opposite of that. We'll keep that to people's
I'm sure
imagination.
there's not an opposite, but I do think that brass players tend to be some of the most friendly and sort of open people in an orchestra.
Definitely. No, that does not surprise me at all, to be honest. When you're performing the repertoire, do you find it's quite easy to find repertoire for the trumpet? Is what people commissioning pieces now and the music that's out there, is it relatively easy to find that repertoire, or do you find it's not a forgotten instrument, but do you think is it hard or particularly easy to get that music?
Yeah, I mean, no doubt that our kind of core standard repertoire is limited. We have the sort of Baroque concertos that, to be honest, most of those we've nicked from oboes and violins and other instruments. There's a few for natural trumpet, and then we've got the Haydn and the Hummel and the Neruda and those sorts of pieces, and then we have a huge gap, so we have nothing really until the 20th century. But there's a huge body of work in the 20th century, and as you say, commissioning new pieces, which I'm starting to do now, which is really, really exciting. So over the next couple of years, I'll have at least 2 trumpet concertos, a sonata with piano, and a whole bunch of new pieces for trumpet and organ as well.
Oh, wow.
Which I'm really excited about. So yeah, commissioning a lot, which is really cool, really exciting, and being able to have a really collaborative approach with the composers and with the performers, the people I'll be collaborating with, is really, really exciting. And also arranging. So the Casta Diva disc was all arrangements of Italian opera arias. So really sort of taking inspiration from other places as well, particularly songs and vocal music. So I'm setting up a new duo with a guitarist, and we'll be doing quite a lot of Britten songs, John Dowland's songs, Foray, Fanny Mendelssohn's songs, Defia, all of these like sort of types of repertoire that otherwise the trumpet doesn't really have access to. But I think, yeah, especially kind of oboe, flute music, and then especially vocal music, because I also believe that the trumpet is the closest instrument to the human voice, because of the fact that it's actually our human body here that is vibrating to make the sound. Even wind instruments and bassoons and saxophones, it's a reed that's making the noise. So I think that in that sense, the physicality, the throat, the body, the tongue, the articulation, it's the same as me speaking or someone singing. The diction, that's all the articulation in the tongue. So I think the trumpet is the closest you really can get to the voice, and so I think that gives us quite a lot of liberty to play their music, which is really nice, really lovely.
Yeah, I guess that's why it is possible to have an album like Casta Diva, which is totally devoted to, you sort of see it on the front that it's like, oh right, it's Italian arias but with a trumpet, like okay, but it works, like you say, because it sounds so similar to a human voice, and it just that timbre, it does make sense.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so much that we can do in the sound and with the articulation and the kind of production of the sound to really create those kind of nuances and turning the phrase and that you can do with the voice. So that's what I love about that. And then on the other side of that, you've got all the kind of technical virtuosity with all the variations on the opera themes. So that really then sort of shows off all the things that the voice perhaps can't do, but the trumpet can do, because we can, double and triple tongue and do fast fingering. So I think that's really cool, because it kind of shows off both of those sort of contrasting sides of the instrument.
So a bit of a desert island discs style question, I guess now. If you had to pick just 3 pieces of repertoire for the trumpet that you could just play or listen to for the rest of your days on an island somewhere deserted, what would you choose and why?
Ooh, I think I would have to choose the Haydn Trumpet Concerto, just because it's kind of the classic piece. And it's a piece that I never get bored of playing. People always say to me, like, oh, you must be sick of playing the Haydn and the Hummel. But actually, no, not really, because they're such great pieces, and there's always new things to find and explore. But at the same time, it feels like coming home to play those pieces. And they're so sort of cheeky and joyful and elegant and playful. I think the Haydn has to be on there. For something completely contrasting, I would say the Trumpet Concerto by Henry Tomasi, which is a beautiful French impressionistic. It's got some really like scrunchy, jazzy, cool harmonies in, and the way that he uses the trumpet is so sort of untrumpety in a way. It's so different from what people think of the trumpet as being, these kind, sort of fanfares and loud, and it's so almost like flute, or he just uses it in such unusual and exciting ways, and the harmonies are just gorgeous. It's so impressionistic and like sort of Debussy Ravel kind of style. And then a third piece, oh my goodness, I would definitely take to a desert island would be the Shostakovich Concerto No. 1 in C minor for piano and trumpet and strings. I'm still a little bit cross with Shostakovich, because he started out writing this piece as a trumpet concerto, and then he added a piano part, and the piano part got bigger and bigger and bigger until it's basically, unfortunately for us, a piano concerto with an obbligato trumpet part. But I absolutely love this piece. I love Shostakovich's music. It's a piece that I listen to regularly to relax, for fun, not in a kind of work mode. And I do think that the bits with the trumpet in are the best, obviously. Again, really, really fun, different characters, really gorgeous, like sad, sort of heartbreaking second movement, and then these really fun, like playful interjections with the piano and the orchestra in the first and the third movements. It's a real kind of a circus piece by the end. So it's really, really fun, and lots of that kind of irony and wit and humour in there that you would expect from Shostakovich. So I think those are 3 incredibly contrasting pieces, but I think I would take those to my desert island.
I think you'd be very happy on your desert island with those 3 pieces.
Yeah, exactly. There's something in there for every mood.
Exactly, however you're feeling.
Exactly.
So moving on to venues for a sec, because obviously being a professional musician, you get the chance to perform in some incredible venues across the world. It'd be interesting actually to hear if there's any that you've performed in the past that really stick out to you, and then any that you kind of have in your forefront of your mind that you really would love to perform in at some point.
Yeah, I think without a doubt the most spectacular venue that I've performed in so far has been the Royal Albert Hall. Acoustically, it's probably not the number 1 hall in the world, but there's something about the atmosphere in the Royal Albert Hall that just hits differently. And I was very fortunate to play the Haydn at the Proms there a few years ago, and I will never forget that atmosphere of just walking out on stage. And it was one of the 10 pieces Proms, so the hall was packed with kids and their parents and teachers and schools, and it was completely full. It was broadcast on the radio and on the TV, and just thousands of people watching, and it was just the most amazing atmosphere of any concert. I'm looking forward to going back sometime in the future, hopefully soon. And then venues that I trumpets always love to play in churches for the acoustics. So I love performing trumpet and organ concerts especially, or sort of chamber music concerts with trumpet and strings, like a string quintet with harp and things like that. That's always really lovely to do in churches. It's always very enjoyable. The worst acoustics for us to play in is anything that's like really dry. So I've played in a couple where it's been a sort of converted theatre or cinema. I had once a converted cinema, and that was probably the worst place I've ever played.
Oh no.
Because, you know, all the carpets and the carpeted chairs and those sorts of like dance type floors with the curtains around the back, and that was it just sucked everything out of the instrument. And then venues I'd like to go to in the future, I mean, there's a lot of them that are on my list. Some of them I've played in with orchestra, so there's things like the Concertgebouw, the Elbphilharmonie. Some of these halls I'm really excited that I will be performing in with piano as part of the Echo Rising Stars tour next season, so 24-25. So I'm really excited to go to some of these halls, and then I look forward to playing concertos in them after that and in the future. And I think other really iconic venues have got to be the Carnegie Hall, the Hollywood Bowl, LA Phil, you know, the Walt Disney Concert Hall. Like, that would be amazing one day, and Vienna.
You can't beat it.
No.
All those are just such
exactly so iconic.
Yeah,
iconic halls. Yeah, I'd love to be able to tick all of those off my list.
I'm sure you will. I would just be keen to ask actually where you think the future of the instrument is going. Like, is there a particular trajectory or path that you see the instrument going into the future? Like, how do you see it progressing from here? Yeah,
I think one thing I would love, and I'm trying to encourage, is to put the trumpet more into chamber music settings as well. So I've got this new duo with guitar, trying out some stuff with harp as well, and just sort of seeing what new and exciting combinations we can have. Got the string quintet, obviously piano and organ. I also have a collaboration with a vocal consort, the Gesualdo 6, and so there's 6 of them and me, and we commissioned some pieces actually. We're about to do a concert in St Martin in the Fields, which I'm really looking forward to. So I think, to try and expand upon the trumpet as a chamber music instrument and put it into these different chamber music contexts. I'm looking at percussion duos, and I think there are lots of exciting things and exciting areas of repertoire that we haven't been able to access yet because it's not written necessarily for the trumpet. But I think that's exciting, and something that definitely I'm exploring. Yeah.
So, have there been any particular challenges that you faced along the way in your career up to this point?
I think that everyone faces different challenges and situations. I think the path is never easy. I would say that as a female trumpet soloist, there have been a few incidents and situations that I've had to sort of learn how to cope with and deal with. And I think I've always felt like I have to prove myself or prove to people that girls can play as loud or as high or as strong or whatever it might be as the boys can. And I remember whenever we had a masterclass at the Royal Academy, I would always put down to play something that was, Hindemith or Honegger, like these big, like beefy, loud, like pieces, just so that I could stand up in front of my peers and be like, and to the professors as well, and be like, girls can play this too. And I remember one of them saying to me, I think maybe like 18 months into the course, and being like, we get it. You don't need to keep proving yourself. Like, what do you want to play? Don't just feel like you have to play what you think you have to play. So that was really interesting, and I kind of took a step back and said, what do I actually want to play, and how do I want to play it? And so that was an interesting discovery. I think my other big challenge really was during the pandemic. Like so many musicians, I had no concerts for 2 whole 6-month periods. I had no concerts. I had to take on a part-time job working for a book publishing company. to pay my bills, to pay the rent of my flat in London that I then wasn't living in because I was in lockdown at my parents' in the countryside. And in the second lockdown, I think it was, so in sort of March, April 2021, I had what only can be described as a kind of complete freak out and rethink, and seriously contemplated leaving the industry, not playing the trumpet anymore. For me, I've always been a very kind of all or nothing, I'm 100% in or I'm completely out person. And I got to that point where I thought, the future was so uncertain, and I wasn't sure if it was worth it anymore, if there was going to be an industry to come back to, how we were going to recover, any of these questions. And I just remember having a complete sort of meltdown and thinking, maybe this isn't it, maybe what's the point? It all felt futile. And it was a good 6 to 8 week period, which it doesn't sound very long, but it's a long time to completely question your entire life choices and identity. And, as musicians, our identity is so wrapped up in our instrument and the music that we make and our work and our sort of creativity. So that was a really tough period. I do think it was helpful for me in a way, because it did make me really carefully consider and think about so much, and why am I doing this? What do I want? What do I want to achieve with this? What's the point? Why am I doing this? And it made me really think about all those things. And so when I then decided, right, I will give this 100% for 18 months. I kind of gave myself a little deadline, 18 months, see where it goes. If you haven't achieved this and that, or they aren't sort of in progress by the end of the 18 months, then you've done what you can do. You've given it your best shot. But that was a scary thing to do, and to have to completely consider throwing in the towel. But I'm very glad that I didn't at that time.
I think there were a lot of, like you say, musicians in that situation. I feel like you handled it really rationally, sort of saying to yourself, right, let's give myself this period of time, 18 months, to see what happens, get back into it, or just see what happens, because no one really knew what was going to happen, whether venues opened, then they closed again, opened, closed. So I feel like even though it was a really tough time for you, it sounds like you handled it really rationally, actually.
I was thinking about what would I do instead, and this was the thing. I was speaking to lots of different family members and friends, and trying to get people saying, what could I do? What are the other sort of jobs that I could even consider doing? And I went through lots and lots of different things and spoke to so many different people, and the idea of any kind of 9 to 5 office sort of job, it just doesn't appeal to me at all. And I just knew that nothing could ever be as exciting and fulfilling and rewarding as being a trumpet soloist. And I'm so lucky I get to travel so much, which I love, and meet new people and explore new cities and cultures and share music and meet the local musicians. I'm doing, since the pandemic, I've been doing a lot more educational work, and I'm starting to do more charity work as well now, which I'm really excited about, just connecting people and helping improve people's lives with music, obviously especially brass instruments and the trumpet. So I think it also really helped clarify those kinds of things for me as well.
That is sadly it for this episode of the Culture Bar podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. I'd like to thank Matilda for joining us for this particular podcast, and you can visit HarrisonParrott.com for more information. Do also take a look at the rest of our podcast for more on important topics in the arts and music world. See you soon.